Alright, so in this lab what we're going to do is start our platformer game. Alright, so it's going to be a 2D platformer game. First thing we need to do, and this is really important when you're doing a game, is you need to make sure that or not even just game, just any project they work on, you got to make sure that it's organized so you don't lose any files. So wherever you want to put this, I don't really care. It's what you're going to be using till the end of at least this lab series and or project. But if you have a file or like a folder that you put all of your projects in, then use that folder. I'm just going to throw mine right on the desktop here just because it's easiest for demonstration purposes. So I'm just going to right click and I'm just going to make a new folder, right? So, or however you do it on Mac. And we'll just call this platformer game, okay? Yay, okay, so it's called platformer game. Now inside of that, I'm going to do a new folder and I will call this Unity. Actually, we're gonna do like this, platformer underscore Unity, and then I'm gonna do new folder, and we'll call this one platformer underscore art. Now the reason why I'm doing this is that I'm gonna put the Unity project inside of here, and then if I make my my art assets, the stuff that I'm gonna use for my sprites and the graphics and all that other jazz, I'm going to put that in this art folder. And the reason why I'm going to do that is that way I can put the original files, like the PSDs, and the larger files that I'm using in order to make my game will go right in here. But they'll end up in my game in this folder eventually, but this will be like the compressed quick version. And the ones that are in here will have like the ones with multiple layers and has all my work in it. And that way they're divided, and I don't lose the originals if I need to. Okay, and then that will all go inside of here. And sometimes if it's a really big project, I'll make many more subfolders, like one for documents, and maybe one for like Maya if I'm doing like a 3D project and what have you. Right. So whatever software, I'm just generically going to call this one art because I'm not sure what I'm going to make as far as my artwork is concerned. I think we're going to use Piscal. So. Once you're done with that, we're just going to go ahead and open up Unity. So hopefully you have Unity Hub. If you don't, if you type in Unity, you'll either see Unity Hub. If you see that, use that. Or you'll see the app if you didn't install the Hub. Okay, I'm going to use the Hub. If you use the app, it'll just open up and you'll see this. You'll see what yours will look a little bit different, but ours will look the same in a second. So I'm going to click on Unity Hub first. And then we're going to do new. Now, if you just open up Unity, you're going to end up with this. You won't have this part here. You'll just see this. We want to do a 2D game. It actually doesn't make a difference. I mean, it kind of makes a difference because otherwise the settings will be different. But Unity's the same regardless. This just has like kind of like the default setup of the interface and the camera and everything are set up for with these. Like these are just kind of like presets in a way. Okay, so we'll just call this a platformer game. And the location, I'm just going to go ahead and put this on. Where are you at? Where are you? Platformer game, and then platformer Unity, and then I'll hit select folder, and we will hit create. Now, when it loads this first time, when you first create the project folder, and every time if you were to switch to a new project, it has to like recompile all the files. But after this initial load, it will be much faster. Meaning, like if I work on this and I do whatever and I save and I close out of Unity, next time I go to open it up, as long as I'm not switching to a new project, it'll load. It'll still take a little bit, but it'll load much faster than this first time. The first time you open up a project or create a project, it takes a little bit longer than the other ones, especially for the first time, because right now it actually is making files for us and folders and all that other stuff. So it's not just opening the program; it's actually creating stuff, the environment we need in order to make our games to begin with. And for that matter, I'm actually going to pause it while it's doing it, or maybe I won't because it's already open. Will you look at that? That is pretty great. All right, so now what we're going to do is start making our game. Okay, so right off the bat, one of the problems I have is that this is our working view. We work in here, and this is our scene view. Okay, I'll just quickly go over the interface here. So on the top is your file, save, export, build. That's all in there. Edit is your typical like selection kind of items and things. I don't really use this all that much. Assets, we won't really need too much either, except for if we're bringing in some assets from other projects and such, but usually you can just do that manually. Game object gets used a little bit, but you can also just do it right here. So we don't really need this as much. Components, we can add those onto our objects themselves right here, so that also isn't really used too awful much. And then window, we will use because most of the windows that we need, in fact, I think maybe all the ones we need right now are actually in here, but in case they aren't, we can get to them here as well, but most of them are already tabs inside of here. The rest of this might look a little bit different depending on yours. I don't think I changed mine at all, but the interface could look a little bit different. So for one, like you might have this all in one big tab. All you gotta do is click and drag, or it might be, I have mine in two. I don't know if I did that before or if that's the default, but it might look a little bit different, but the items are all probably still there. Okay. On the left here, this is the hierarchy. So basically everything that's actually physically in your scene will show up, that's in your game, in this level, will show up in this box, okay? So this is what's actually your game is made of. So currently, all it is the sample scene, which is the name of the file here, that's the scene, and there's just a camera, and that's it, okay? This panel here, which is kind of our main panel, this is where you make all of your stuff in. You can navigate, zoom in and out. This is actually in 2D view, but you can turn that off, and you can be actually in 3D view. We'll leave it in 2D because that's what we're doing. That's what this is. And then you'll see animation and asset store. Don't worry about those. We're not going to use those right now. This is the game view. So this is actually when the player plays the game. This is what it looks like. You're not allowed to interact in here. You can just preview, okay? If you have multiple monitors, this is actually a good one to tear off and put it on another monitor so you can look at it, but then, you know, have more screen real estate to actually work in. On the right here, this tab is basically the properties panel. So whatever object you have selected, it'll show you all of the options for that object. All of the things that are inside of it. This is how basically you interact and make all your settings, okay? Now down here, this one, the project tab, this is your reservoir of all the things that could be in your scene. So when you create scripts or you create graphics, you drop them into this assets folder. And then basically, if you want to use them, you can dump them into your scene. But this is just a bucket that holds all of the stuff that is currently in your game. Nothing can be in your game that isn't inside of this bucket. I mean, I guess you could probably import something from somewhere else, but for the most part, that's kind of true, okay? There's also a console tab, which if you have any scripting errors or such, or if you do like debug.log or whatever and you're trying to figure out an error, this will show you, okay? And then there's animation, which we won't need yet, at least not for a while. Okay, so that's roughly the interface. Let's start making stuff. So right off the bat, one thing I'm going to need are some platforms. I'm just going to make the basic graphics, and we'll kind of build off of that. So to make some objects, we're just going to go to Create, and we're going to do 2D Object and Sprite. Sprites are our graphics. They are flat 2D graphics, okay? So new sprite. And I'm just going to go ahead and, so I have it selected here. I'm going to change the name up here, and I'm just going to call it platform. That's great. And right now, you'll see it's not visible. And the reason why is that we made a sprite object, but there's actually no graphic attached to it, okay? So if you look at this object, it has these different components in it. Currently, it has two. It has transform and it has sprite renderer. If I grab main camera, you'll see it has transform, this camera, and this audio listener. Okay, so these are different components, and components are basically they're nodes inside of that object that have settings and can do things, right? So they can you can either say something about them or they can do things. So transform obviously holds its positional data. The sprite renderer, that's the thing that represents its graphics. Okay, so this is actually the thing I got to interact with. So if you look currently, the sprite, there is no graphic attached to it. So I'm going to hit this little target symbol. Now, normally you would bring your own graphics in, but I don't want to have to make graphics and do all that. So we're just going to use placeholders to start with. And by default, Unity comes with these graphics, and these are actually not made. They're not made for what we're going to use them for. They're actually made just as UI elements. Basically, you can have switches and buttons and things like that, and these are just used as the placeholders for those as well. But I'm going to go ahead and just use this UI sprite, so I'll just double click on it. And now, if you look, you can see it. There it is. All right. That looks fine and dandy. Let's just make it a little bit bigger. So over here, you can use any of these numbers or any of these little things up here, but to navigate in here is this. If we were in 3D space, it would be Alt and left mouse button, right? Alt middle mouse button and Alt right mouse button. So if you're familiar with Maya or Mudbox or most 3D programs, it's that same basic navigation. Okay, we're obviously in 2D, so it still holds true. It's just we're not going to be able to rotate. Okay, so if you just hold Alt and middle mouse button, actually you can just click in middle mouse button. You don't even have to hold Alt. I'm just used to doing it, and it works the same. So Alt middle and then Alt right mouse button. Now our transforms, we can type in numbers up here. It would be the same thing. So like, watch, if I hit 2, 2, 2, that will make it twice as large as it was, which is fine, but that's not as big as I need. I can also change these by using this. So this is the move. So I can move this, which I do need to move it down. This is the rotate. I don't need to rotate it, and this is the scale. Okay. Now, and then this is, where's select? Let's see, that gives me the hand. I don't know how to get select. Well, select is Q. So it goes so Q, W, E, and R. Okay. So we want to use R, or this one here. And I'm just going to scale it up a little bit wider, and then we're going to scale it or a little bit taller, and then we're going to scale it a little bit wider like that. And I'm going to call that a platform. I'm going to change the color of it too. So if you look, you can force a color onto it. Kind of overlays whatever the sprite is. So I'm going to click on that, and let's just go ahead and do green because platforms are green. Just going to click that off. Okay, so you just click on this little box and that will pop up. And good, we have a platform. Woo, that's super exciting stuff. Okay, next we're going to need a player. So we'll go ahead and create a player. So we'll go create. And for this, I am going to create an empty. And we're just going to go ahead and call it player. And right now it's right here. I'm just going to move it down here. That's roughly where I want it. Okay. And we'll call it player. That's good. All right. And this just has to transform information. Now what we're going to do is on this player, we're going to attach as a separate object the graphic. Okay. Instead of using a graphic itself, I'm just using an empty object, just an empty node that has a transform. And we can add components. In fact, I could even add if I go to rendering, I can even add the sprite renderer to it and give it a graphic that way. So there's really no difference between all the objects. It's just the default components that are already attached to them. Okay. So that being said, what I want to do is make another node, create 2D, and then we'll do a sprite. Okay. And we're just going to call this one player underscore graphic. Okay, so this will be my player graphic, and this will actually hold the graphic of my player. Okay, so woohoo! So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to the sprite here where it says none, and we will click on this, and I'm going to go ahead and we will choose this one, the check mark. Great. Okay, and just so that it has a little bit more color to it, I'll click on this, and let's just make it red so it's kind of like Mario. Okay. But again, it's too small, so I'm just going to go over here, R, and scale it bigger, like so. And I want this to be parented to this, because the idea is that when this moves, it will move this graphic, okay? So take the player graphic, and I'm going to click and drag it onto player, and you see how it's kind of inset? That means that now it is actually parented to the player, okay? But if you were to look at this, you'll see it's slightly offset. right? So this is the player, and then there's the player graphic. So to position this where the player is, I'm just going to zero out its position data. So 0, 0, and 0. Okay. So now when I move my player, it will move the graphic as well, because that is parented to it. Okay. So we have a graphic, we have our player, we have the platform. Yeah. So we've got kind of the base things we need in order to make the game. Let's just do this real quick. I'm going to just save it before we do the next video. So I'm just going to go save as. So file, save as. Go to scenes. And we'll call this level 01. Good. And you'll see we have the scenes folder. Go ahead. I just double clicked on the scenes folder. And just go ahead and delete sample scenes. Delete. Because I don't need that anymore. And that's good. Okay. We'll stop it here. And then the next video we will code up some stuff.